All praise, glory, and honor. It's most certainly due to the Most High, Yah, the God of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And peace to you in the name of the Son. I count it truly a blessing each and every single time that I can come before you to preach the word of God. Never do I count it a light thing to do so. Coming on super late. Was already late, then having some serious technical difficulties. But nevertheless, I want to deal with Sister Latoya's questions concerning marriage. I did a lesson that was, concerning marriage to some degree, and was dealing with adultery actually. And so she asked a couple questions. She said, "What defines who is married and who is not married?" She said, "What steps should a couple take to be considered married? And is the marriage license necessary?" Okay, so we're going to deal with all that real quick. Okay, so the first thing is that if you want to know the definition of marriage, the definition of what defines marriage, the Bible defines marriage. So if you want to learn about marriage and the different aspects of marriage, from who can be married to the roles in marriage, you simply need to go to the Bible. The Bible defines it for us. Let's go to Genesis, the second chapter, because it is here where the institution of marriage is put forth. Now, I'll pick it up in verse 18, Genesis 2 and verse 18. It says, "And the Lord God said, it is not good that the man should be alone. I will make an help meet for him." Okay, so first and foremost, you had the man here. Okay, you had God. He took this man from the dust of the ground, breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Okay, and so he said, "It's not good that this one should be alone. I'm going to make an help fit for him." That's what it says, meet. So it says in verse, because he made the animals, but there was no help meet or help fit for him amongst the animals. Then it says, "And the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept, and he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh instead thereof." Okay, so he performed surgery on this man, took his, what I believe to be regenerative rib out of him, and fashioned a woman. It says, "In the rib which the Lord God had taken from man, made he a woman and brought her unto the man." Okay, so now you have two now. Okay, and you see the one that said, well, the woman was taken out of the man. Okay, he didn't take dust. Notice he didn't take dust and create a woman. He took the woman out of man. And the woman is the help meet or the help fit for man. Verse 20, we're going to talk about that a little later. Verse 23, it says, "And Adam said, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh." Right? Then it says, so now is the institution of marriage. He says, "She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man." It said, "Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh." So notice, so first of all, who can be married? Okay, so it's a man and a woman. Okay, it's a man and a woman that could be married, and we're gonna find out we're gonna read a little bit more what this is for. But so it said, "Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother." So now he would leave father and mother and cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. So this woman, this Isha, right, was given unto this man. Okay, and he leaves and he establishes a house. He leaves his father and mother, cleaves into his wife. They become one flesh, and that one flesh is sexual intercourse. Okay, but that doesn't necessarily make you married just because you have sex. That's not actually accurate. You hear a lot of people say that. But so we know that there's a oneness there, there's a unit there. Okay, and this is when marriage is instituted. And marriage ultimately is instituted. Why? Why are they becoming one? Because in becoming one, they bring forth seed and can bring forth this, or could fulfill this mandate or dispensation, if you will, that's given when it says in Genesis 1 and 27, so God created. It says, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. And God blessed them. And God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it. Okay, so now when he's saying that, fill the earth with with you. So in order to do that, you have to have children. You have to become one. But who do you become one with? You become one with your wife. Okay, so that you will bring. So the institution of marriage is the structure, the marital structure that is conducive and best fit to bring forth children. Okay, so that's the institution of marriage. That's when it began. Now, I understand. So she said, what defines me? So then we're gonna look at marriage in a few different ways. Okay, let's go to the New Testament. Because we obviously this is the will of the Most High here. He institutes the union and he's witness to it. Let's go to John, the 2nd chapter. Because one thing about who can be married, one thing about it is actually let's go to Malachi. Let's go to Malachi. Because marriage is a covenant. Say that again. Marriage is a covenant. What is a covenant? A covenant is an agreement between two or more parties. Okay? So when you saying what defines marriage? Well, we know who it's between. It's between a man and a woman, right? It was an institution put in place by God, and this is a covenant. This is Malachi, the 2nd chapter, in verse 14. Here he says something. He says, "Yet ye say wherefore? Because the Lord hath been witness." Now he's talking about the treachery of men, right? And then some of the things they were doing. He says, "Yet ye say wherefore? Because the Lord hath been witness between thee and the wife of thy youth, against whom thou hast dealt treacherously. Yet is she thy companion," right? We saw that companionship in the beginning, right? When he brought them together, he said, "You leave your father and your mother, you cleave unto your wife." Then it says, "And the wife of thy covenant." So again, what is a covenant? A covenant is an agreement, brothers and sisters. So marriage is between a man and a woman, and it is a covenant. Let's go to the Old Testament. Let's go to Exodus, the 24th chapter. Because when you have a covenant, you have an agreement. And here, when you see the marriage, right here, the people here you would say Yahuwah, but we understand that this is the Messiah before he's manifested in the flesh. Exodus, the 24th chapter. It says in verse, because it was actually proposed prior to this. But if we go to Exodus, the 24th chapter, verse 3, it says, "And Moses came and told the people." Actually, let's read it in Exodus, the 19th chapter, just so we understand that this is like the conditions of this agreement were put forth. Okay, so it says in verse 3, "And Moses went up unto God, and the Lord called unto him out of the mountain, saying, Thus shalt thou say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel." So Moses is like the liaison to go between. He's standing in the gap between God and the people. Okay, so now he's telling him. Now God's telling Moshe or Moses what he should tell the people. So they said, "Yeah, I've seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings and brought you unto myself. Now, therefore, if you will obey my voice indeed and keep my covenant." Wait a minute now. We got a covenant. We have an agreement. It says, "Then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. And ye shall be a kingdom. You shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel." And Moses came and called for the elders of the people and laid before their faces all these words which the Lord commanded him. And all the people answered together and said, "All that the Lord hath spoken, we will do." And Moses returned the words of the people unto the Lord. So now he went and told the people what the Lord said, and they agreed to go into a covenant, right? So this is like, we'll read this further. It's like a husband going into a covenant with a woman or proposing a covenant, and she agreed to it. Now, Exodus 24th chapter, they go into it. Exodus 24 and verse, because you understand why I'm reading this in a second. I'm gonna go to the New Testament, but Exodus 24th chapter and verse 3. And Moses came and told the people all the words of the Lord and all the judgments, and all the people answered with one voice and said, all the words that the Lord hath said will we do. So now they acknowledge the covenant, and then so now they come under the blood of the covenant. It says, and Moses took half of the, verse 6, and Moses took half of the blood and put it in basins, and half of the blood he sprinkled on the altar. And he took the book of the covenant and read in the audience of the people, and they said, all that the Lord has said, we do, and be obedient. It's like when a woman you often see this in the Western world, where they come before some altar and some white dress, and a man's in a tuxedo, and then she will say, they would say, well, you love, honor, and obey, or something to that degree, and they will say, I do. And Moses took the blood and sprinkled it on the people. So now they come. This is a blood covenant even, right? But it says, and Moses took the blood and sprinkled it on the people and said, behold, the blood of the covenant which the Lord had made with you concerning all these words. Now let's go to Ephesians. Okay, and we should understand too that even when you looking, matter of fact, hold up, we're going to go to Ephesians in a second. Let's go to I'm in Deuteronomy, the 22nd chapter, and I want to read something here. It says, now this is about a man that's raising up, a complaint against his wife for whatever reason, right? And well, actually not for every reason. It says in verse 14, and give occasions of speech against her and bring up an evil name upon her and say, I took this woman, and when I came to her, I found her not a maid, meaning she wasn't a virgin. Then it says, then shall the father, and I'm not really focusing on that, I just want to focus on this. It said, then shall the father, the damsel, and her mother take and bring forth the tokens of the damsel's virginity. That was the bed sheet that was under them when they first had intercourse, when the hymen was broken, and the blood would flow onto that. You understand? So that's even a blood cut. People don't understand. That's how it's supposed to be. A woman's supposed to be a virgin under ideal and initial circumstance. You have cases where women, for example, they were married, then their husband may die, and they get remarried. Obviously, they might have kids. Obviously, not married then, virgin then, because they've been married. But ideally, under ideal situations, a woman was virgin, and then you would have these tokens of virginity. Family would keep this, and this is all about marriage. See, this is far from what's going on right now. Okay. What's going on right now is, again, like I said, you look statistically, women have started having sex about 16, 17 years old, even sometimes younger. Go to college, have a lot of partners. By the time they're 22, 23, had a baby out of particularly our people. We have babies out of wedlock like 40 going north. Then they get up in age, maybe almost pushing 30. They really want to get married, and they got 2 kids, and they'll find somebody to marry them, right? Or not. Actually, but either way, that's not how things should be. You should be a virgin until you marry for a woman. So it says, then shall the father, it says, then shall the father and mother take and bring forth the tokens of the damsel's virginity unto the elders of the city in the gate. Right? Then I'm not really going in. I don't want to go into all that, what happens later. You can read that on your own, but I want to point out that even that's a blood covenant. People don't realize that it's a covenant. It's a blood covenant. It's agreement, and that's the blood of that covenant. It's shown on the tokens of her virginity. Now let's go to let's go to the New Testament, where I think I mentioned Ephesians. Okay, Ephesians. Because this is a covenant. We read it was a covenant of Malachi, right? We saw the example of God and his people. So it says, Ephesians 5 and verse 22. Well, actually, I'm going to pick it up in verse, I'll pick it up in 22. It said, wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as unto the Lord. Okay. Now, it says, for the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, and he is the savior of the body. Therefore, as the church is subject unto Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it. Okay. Now, I'm gonna go down a little further. It says in verse 31, it said, for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall be joined unto his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. This is a great mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. So now when you look at Messiah and his bride, that's the same thing as a man and his bride. Okay, similar dynamic. So we should understand it's a covenant. So who defines marriage? The Bible defines marriage. Who is marriage with is between a man and a woman. Ultimately, it's the institution by which mankind can be fruitful and multiply and bring forth children. So therefore, two men can't be married. Two women can't be married. Now, let's go back to the Old Testament just to clear up this misconception, because some people say that sex, that basically means you are married. Sex does not mean you are married. Okay? That doesn't mean that. In and of itself, it doesn't mean that. We are in Exodus, the 22nd chapter, excuse me. Okay? I'm going to read it in Deuteronomy 22 instead. It's in a couple places. It's in Deuteronomy 22 as well. Let me read it here. Deuteronomy, the 22nd chapter. It says, wait, hold on one second. Just read this in Deuteronomy. Give me one second. It's Exodus 21. Is that the right one? 22, rather. Hold on one second. Because see, we want to clear up any misconceptions, because people will say, oh, you had sex, that means you're married. No. Yeah, it is in Deuteronomy 22, but it's in verse 28. Let me see. I'll just read it in Exodus. Forgive me. I'll just read it in Exodus 22. Same thing is in Deuteronomy 22, verse 28. But it says in Exodus 22 and 16, and if a man entice a maid, meaning the version that is not betrothed, meaning she's not in the Western world they would say engaged, meaning she's betrothed. She's basically going to marry somebody else. We want to clear up another misconception too. It said, if a man entice a maid that is not betrothed and lie with her, he shall surely endow her to be his wife. Okay, so if he, in other words, if he slept with a woman that was a virgin, okay, so I want to make that distinction. And if a man entice a maid that is not betrothed, she's not betrothed, she's not going to be married to somebody else, and she's not married already to somebody else. Because in both instances, that's capital punishment. If a man would sleep with a woman that's betrothed to another man, or if a man sleep with a woman that is married to another man. It says, if her father utterly refused to give her, like what Joseph was going to do with Miriam, or he thought she was dealing with somebody else because she was pregnant. And so he was going to put her away privately, not willing to make her a public example, because she would have been stoned for that if she had indeed dealt with some other man. But it says, if her father utterly refused to give her unto him, he shall pay money according to the dowry of virgins. Okay, so now he had to endow her to be his wife. He had to pay a dowry. That's another thing. So when you look at marriage, they were dealing with dowries. Period. We could go and look at that and see and clear up another misconception when we do that. So now marriage, when you look at that components of marriage and what it is in the Bible, is totally different. Totally different. So now let's go to Genesis. We're gonna go to Genesis, the 24th chapter. Genesis, the 24th chapter. And here we'll see an example of a woman being given to a man by her father. See, the man was supposed to, that's why he had to pay that dowry reverse, and he could refuse to give his daughter to this man after he slept with her, because you jumped the gun. You did things out of order. Okay? Just because what sex does is consummates the marriage. It seals the deal, if you will. That's not what marriage is. Again, marriage is a covenant. So you just sleeping with somebody. You can just sleep with a prostitute, and the agreement is for $50 or whatever it is. That's not marriage. A one night stand is not marriage. I had somebody tell me years ago that that every woman, I've heard that doctrine recently. Every woman that a man has slept with in his life, that's his wife. That's not true. That simply is not true. Marriage is sex is what consummates a marriage. Okay? So now, like hence I gave you that token of virginity example, but nevertheless, Genesis the 24th chapter, because you were supposed to go to the father, right? People just doing any and everything. You don't listen. The woman, the female, is covered by her father or by her husband. When she's in her father's house, he is responsible for her spiritually. He is her head until she is married. He's the head of that household. You don't have you think about it. If you really think about how crazy this is, you got people, and a lot of times parents know what's happening. They'll give their kids birth control. They'll give them prophylactics. They say, well, they're gonna do it anyway. But when you really think about it, you are condoning a child, basically a child laying with another child, and that child is not in any kind of covenant with your daughter, and you allowing him or condoning him having sex with your daughter, and he can't take care of nothing that's produced if fruit come from that union. He's not even an adult. He's not even in the position to do that. And it's really you out of pocket doing that. The daughter is playing the role of a whore, and he playing the role of a whoremonger. See, everything's out of pocket. But nevertheless, the man was supposed to go to the father. Okay? Now, that don't mean, it doesn't necessarily mean, you can see it in this example here. We can't just say that because he went to the father and she automatically was forced to marry the man. Let's read this here. See, this is Genesis, the 24th chapter. I'm going to pick it up at verse 50. Well, because then the servant of Abraham is sent to find ultimately it turns out to be Rebecca of Abraham's people. And then it says in I'll pick it up in verse 50. It's 49. It says, and now if you will deal kindly and truly with my master, tell me. And if not, tell me, that I may turn to the right hand or to the left. So now this is a servant talking to Laban and Bethuel. It says, then Laban and Bethuel answered and said, the thing proceeded from the Lord. We cannot speak unto thee good or bad. Okay? Behold, Rebekah is before thee. Take her and go, and let her be thy master's son's wife, as the Lord has spoken. Okay? So now, it says, hold on 1 second. Actually, I'm going to go back a little bit, because this is the part dealing with the dowry. I'll keep reading. It said, and it came to pass that when Abraham's servant heard their words, he worshipped the Lord, bowing himself to the earth. And the servant brought forth jewels of gold and jewels of gold and raiment, jewels of silver, and jewels of gold and raiment, and gave them to Rebekah. He gave also to her brother and to her mother precious things. Okay, so what's that? That's a dowry. That's a dowry. Okay. Um, let's see. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Verse 57. Because she it's not like they just say, oh, she gotta go. Because I said it said, and they said, we will call the damsel and inquire in her mouth. And they called Rebekah and said unto her, wilt thou go with this man? And she said, I will go. And they sent away Rebekah, their sister, and her nurse, and Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebekah and said unto her, thou art our sister, and be thou the mother of thousands of millions, and let thy seed possess the gate of those which hate them. Okay? So now she left. But it was like, they actually asked her, do you want to do this? So like, ultimately, you going into a covenant, you need to agree. Okay? Now, the terms were already given. The permission was granted. She agreed. The dowry was given. Now let's see what happens. This is we're gonna keep reading. And Genesis, the 24th chapter, in verse 63, it says, and Isaac went out to meditate in the field at the eventide, and he lifted up his eyes and saw, and behold, the camels were coming. Now this is servant of Rebekah approaching. It says, and Rebekah lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, she lighted off the camel, and she had said unto the servant, what man is this that walketh in the field to meet us? And the servant had said, it is my master. Therefore she took a veil and covered herself. And the servant told Isaac all things that he had done. And Isaac brought her into his mother Sarah's tent, and took Rebekah, and she became his wife. And he loved her, and Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Okay, so now that became his wife. You don't see, but you don't see like a evidence of a wedding or like a marriage festival or something like that. But nevertheless, you already had the components for a marriage. See, so when you have witnesses to it, the agreement. Okay, and that's something else when you talk about what marriage, you have witnesses. Again, you have an agreement, and you call it a covenant, it may have been written down. Okay, let's go to Gospel according to John. Peace to you, brother. Gospel according to John, chapter 7, or about chapter 2, excuse me. Chapter 2. And we're going to pick it up at verse 1. It says, and the third day there was a marriage in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. And both Jesus was called and his disciples to the marriage. Okay? So now, yeah, he turned water to wine at this wedding. But what is a wedding? A wedding is ultimately the witnessing of two individuals going into the confines of the marital covenant. That's what that is. That's why even in certain instances, you will see people sign as witnesses. We're going to get to the marriage license too as well. So again, what defines marriage? The Bible defines marriage. Who is marriage between? It's between a man and a woman. Ultimate purpose of marriage is it's the institution by which to bring forth children. Okay? It is when you see it biblically, a man, if he wanted to marry a woman, he wanted a wife to cleave unto, he had to go to that woman's father. Okay? And he would pay a dowry. All right. She would, and then they would come together. And sometimes you see, well, first of all, and it's a covenant. And there are instances in which you see the large witnessing of this covenant, or it could be just the terms already agreed to. Okay. So that's what you see. So she said, what defines marriage? Who is married and who is not married? Okay. So again, when you have those components, you're married. Okay, you have people that have an agreement. They made a covenant, right? Because you don't need. Let's see. Let me go here. It says, what steps should a couple take to be considered married? Okay, so let's go here. Let's go to Second Corinthians. Before I deal with something else, let's go to Second Corinthians, the 5th chapter, or 6th chapter, excuse me. Because what should you consider? What steps? If you're a couple, first of all, before you consider what you should do as a couple, it's about what you should do as an individual. Because this is a serious matter. People are ruining their lives with it's not funny, but people are ruining their lives with marriage. And what I mean by that is they are getting themselves into some terrible situations with some people that they should not have even been in the same room with, let alone married to. So now this is 2 Corinthians, the 6th chapter, and verse 14. It says, be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship have righteousness with unrighteousness, and what communion have light with darkness? In other words, there are certain people you shouldn't marry. If you are of the faith, you shouldn't marry people who are not. Now, you got people faking the funk, as they say. You got people who claiming to believe in God, but then telling their wife to get an abortion. You got people claiming to be a believer, but then they married to a woman and then having sex with another man. See, that's the kind of foolishness that's going on. You need to really determine what kind of person this is. And if it's the type of person that's not going to serve God, whether you're in the picture or not, if they're not going to serve God, meaning they on the fence, wait, you don't even bother with that. You don't even need to bother with that. He says that what concord hath Christ with Belial? So he said, be ye not equally yoked together with unbelievers, who what fellowship have righteousness with unrighteousness? And what communion have light with darkness? And what concord hath Christ with Belial? Or what part hath he that believeth with an infidel? Right? And what agreement hath the temple of God with idols? For ye are the temple of the living God, as God has said. I will dwell in them and walk in them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. You need to ultimately put salvation first. Okay? Because ultimately, it's all about you. This is going to sound selfish, but when it comes to salvation, it's all about you. And therefore, you need to determine what's the best way to get salvation. It might be alone. But see, when you get married, you just walk in the path of salvation together. Y'all should be going in the same direction. You don't want nobody that's you got to drag. You don't want nobody that you got to chase. You don't want nobody that they going in the opposite direction. That's a distraction. So you first and foremost need to consider your position, where you're at, and determine, is this person really go through thick and thin? You need the type of person to say, hey man, even if you leave, I'm still serving God. That's what you need. That's if you write yourself. You might be the problem. Deuteronomy, the 7th chapter. So you can't just marry anybody. You know what you want to consider? You want to consider who you are. You want to consider salvation. Deuteronomy, the 7th chapter, and verse 1, it says, when the Lord thy God shall bring thee into the land whither thou goest to possess it, and have cast out many nations before thee, the Hittites and the Girgashites and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than thou. And when the Lord thy God shall deliver them before thee, thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor show mercy unto them. So now we got that word again, covenant. He said, don't make a covenant with these people, an agreement with them. Like what? Like marriage. Let's keep reading. Neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son. He tells you why. Is it because, they're not Israel? He tells you, for they will turn away thy son from following me, that they may serve other gods. So will the anger of the Lord be kindled against you and destroy thee suddenly. He said, ultimately, the wrong mate will cause you, these other nations, they serving other gods. They'll cause you to turn your back on the true and living God. You understand? So you can't love anybody more than God. You need to understand where you're at. That's why I said, he that loves father and mother more than me is not worthy of me. You can't love nobody more than him, anybody more than him. So you really need to take into consideration. I know people don't want to be alone, but shoot, man, ultimately what you want to be is in the kingdom. Ultimately, where you don't want to be is a lake of fire. Messing around with the wrong mate can get you off track. Okay? So now, the last question, she said, is the marriage license necessary? Okay, so a marriage license, brothers and sisters, is now you had licenses. This is from marriage.com. I did want to read something from marriage.com. It says in the ancient Near East, marriage contracts occurred at an early age. Hold on one second. This actually try to get the one that shows it has some early. Yeah, here it is. Excuse me. The oldest ancient marriage contract archaeologists have found so far, they estimate to be 4,000 years old, and it's on display in the Istanbul Archaeology Museum. It's a 4,000-year-old Assyrian baked clay tablet, was originally unearthed at UNESCO World Heritage Site of Kultepe-Kaniş in Turkey's central Kayseri province. Let's see. Is this it? The text describes the marriage of a man and woman known as Lakipum and Hatala as part of their agreement. Again, because marriage is an agreement. It says the husband can employ the help of a surrogate mother if the couple failed to conceive a baby 2 years after the date of marriage. Okay, so marriage contracts are nothing new. You know, you have ketubas. If you ever heard of that, you see people using those. If you think about the scriptures and the agreements, it doesn't say. Where it says a covenant, you know it is an agreement. Now, whether or not that agreement was written down, you don't see an instance of them saying, I'm writing down this agreement. But notice you do see a bill of divorce. So they were dealing in some type of paperwork in the sense of writing things down. Because you certainly had an agreement. You know, you certainly had witnesses in various cases. So to hold people accountable. And then if there was an issue, you had judges. Well, if you got a judge, even a judge in the American context will ask you where the paperwork at. You know, so could be, but you definitely had an agreement. Now, when you look in the American context and where marriage licenses came from the desire to prevent whites and blacks from marrying. You see this, you see it early on, like in the 1700s. North Carolina passed the law. They basically wanted to prevent interracial marriages because you had these indigenous people here, right? The Europeans came and enslaved them. That didn't work out too well. They had a lot of indentured servants come from Europe. But then when you had these Africans coming over here, they, you know, what people will do is they will intermingle. People will establish relationships, whether coerced or not. Okay, so when you look at the history of marriage licenses in this country, the history of marriage licenses in this country is that they were used to prevent blacks and whites from marrying, actually. And you had a miscegenation laws well into the 20th century. Okay, now, so with that being said, when you enter into a marriage contract in the West, particularly in the United States, because ultimately you think about it, do you need a marriage license? No, what you need is an agreement. But when you get a marriage license, you're entering into a three-party agreement with whoever getting married. Because in this country, men and men can be married, women and women can be married, right? But two parties go into an agreement with the state. Okay, so that's what happens. Peace to you. Now, if you're a male in America, and you get a marriage license, understand you are in an extremely vulnerable situation. You say, why would you say that? First of all, let me say this. I believe in the institution of marriage. However, if you look at what's happening right now, I'd be remiss to not mention this. If you look at what's happening right now, 70% of divorces are initiated by women in America. Okay, more than family courts are biased against men. So if you get a marriage license, you have 50% divorce rate. 70% of those divorces are initiated by women. You are going to end up probably paying alimony, more than likely. Because again, the West is different. If you have children, of course, you pay child support. And you should be paying child support. Should be taking care of your children. Let me say this. That money should be going to the care of your children, not on shoes and purses. But nevertheless, so just know you open yourself up to being extremely vulnerable, because you basically don't have power when it comes to that. If you get a marriage license in the West, that's just what it is. If you're a man, that's just what it is. You'll end up paying for your lawyer and her lawyer in a court. Okay, so you really need to take that into consideration. If you say you're gonna be married and you say you're gonna get a marriage license through the court, it might cost you $30 to get in and $150,000 to get out of, or more than that. So just keep that in mind when you talk about a marriage license. But technically, no, in the eyes of God, no, a marriage license isn't. That's in the law. That's in the eyes of the state. That's what they recognize. But he don't. For example, you see this amongst Muslims, right? They will have their imam or something, and they oversee a marriage, and they two will come together and they will draw up their own contract. A lot of people doing that. So now you got a contract, they agreeing to that, or you set it up in a way. You see people who set it up, but they don't want to go. They don't want to be dealing with the state. Now, this is not me giving you advice on what to do or nothing. I'm just saying what people are doing. They will get life insurance. They will get different things to put in place, just so as if they just the same way in which you would go to get a marriage license, and if something happened to the partner, to the man, then they would be taken care of. Same people doing the same thing, only they're not using the state to do it. So again, I'd be remiss not to say that to men, you are putting yourself in a vulnerable position. Ultimately, you're in a vulnerable position getting married, period. So what you really want to make sure of is you marrying the right person, and you want to make sure that you understand your role. Because the sister said, what defines who is married and who is not? Well, again, a man and a woman is husband and wife. But you can have the title of husband and the title of wife and not be a husband and not be a wife. What am I talking about? Just like in a football game, somebody could have a quarterback and never play. They say, what's your position? Quarterback. You ever played before? You ever been in the game? No. You got a lot of that. You got a lot of people. They in a position, but they not actually playing in that position. They're not doing what that position say to do. It's just by title. It's just by title. So if you, for example, if you're a man and you the husband, you the father, but you're not taking care of your household, how are you the husband or father? You're not fulfilling your duties. That's what makes you who you are. Who you are. If you're a husband, are you acting as one? Are you providing for your family, your wife and your children? Are you doing the things that are necessary? Are you the spiritual head of your household? See, the problem, and that's why I think, quite frankly, people need counseling. They don't understand. People don't really understand what marriage is, because we've been given a bunch of lies. We think these relationships should be based on romance, like out of Rome. Like you got hit with Cupid's arrow, and now you are infatuated, your belly full of butterflies, can't think straight. You nose open, you could drive a Buick through it, as if that's what it's all about. Nah, that's not what it's about. People really need to be honest, people need to seek wise counsel and get some understanding of what marriage is and what they will be required to do in a marriage. Because if you really understood what marriage was, you wouldn't be so quick to get in it. You might slow your roll. Right? So if you're a man and you really understand you got to be responsible for other people. You understand? You have to be responsible. Otherwise, you're not fulfilling your duty. That's why I say he that cares enough for his own household is worse than an infidel. Timothy tells you that. Or in the epistle to Timothy. Especially in his own household. You ain't taking care of your household, but you're calling yourself. You say, man, you worse than a non-believer. Why are you talking about God? Why are you talking about God? You ain't. He said, but if any provide not for his own, especially for those of his own house, he have denied the faith and is worse than an infidel. So you have to provide the physical necessities for your household. You go to Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter. It's the duty of the man to teach his sons and his sons, like so they can teach their sons what? About the Torah. So you have to be the spiritual head of your household. Now, what's the woman's job? It says in the very beginning when marriage was instituted, he said, I'm gonna find a help meet or fitting for him. You are the help meet of the man. You're not the boss of the man. You're not his head. You're not telling him what to do. You're not saying talking about what I'm gonna allow him to do. Like you got to get permission from your wife. That's the thinking today. Because again, we living in a matriarchy. Everything is upside down. Everything is upside down. And people try to we are entrenched in this culture. So we look at marriage from Western eyes and then try to apply that to the Bible and can't figure out what's going on because you got the wrong lens on. You got the wrong glasses on. You got some Western glasses. This is an Eastern book. You're not gonna understand it. Or you're going to misapply the tenets of it because you looked at it through a Western lens. What the West is doing has nothing. What people do in the Western world and in Europe has nothing to do with this book. At all. At all. So you got to know your position. If you are, because again, we in the era of Me Too. We in the era of woman here we roar. We in the era of black girl magic. Listen, a woman, according to the Bible, is supposed to submit to her husband. That's what she's supposed to do. Like I even heard, and it's real subtle how you got to look at and subtle how things basically people are dealing out of emotion. Like I heard something. And people were talking about polygyny. This is like some people was talking about it. I'm listening to it on YouTube, and they said one of them said, "See, just so you know, Sarah, she basically she commanded Abraham to do that, so to take another wife because she thought she was barren. Now it is true." That she did that because she was barren. However, did you not read the part where she called him Lord? She not commanding him to do anything. She's saying it. Yeah, she said to do. She suggested it, and he went along with it. But she was calling him Lord. See, that's what I'm saying. But they were putting that out there because they would say, well, see, she's not, or she is in a position of authority. No, that's not how that works. That's not how that works. And so that don't mean a woman is a doormat, but you need to understand as a woman, matter of fact, if you're supposed to obey your husband, matter of fact, I just want to read this to you real quick. Let's go to let's see, because there's a couple places, it's all over, but they kind of like don't want to deal with this. right? You know what? They don't want to get a power up that they have been given by the Western world, not realizing that you're gonna be held accountable, just like a man who don't take care of his family gonna be held accountable. This is 1 Peter 3 and verse 1. Or verse 5, it says, for after this man in the old time, the holy woman. So now he's talking about being adorned with a type of character. And he says, for after this man in the old time, the holy women also who trusted in God adorn themselves, being in subjection unto their own husbands. Then it says, even as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, whose daughters ye are, as long as you do well and are not afraid with any amazement. So like she called him Lord. Okay. Now if you think about that, if you go marry somebody that you're supposed to be in subjection to, don't you think you need to marry somebody who's serving God, that's not going to do harm to you purposely, that's always trying to do the right thing? That should narrow down that pool of candidates. If you really think about what your position is in relation to the other person, you wouldn't be so quick to jump into a marriage. You really consider what that person was like. Because again, if you got to submit, if you supposed, it say all over the Bible, a woman's supposed to submit to a man, to a husband. If you're supposed to submit, you need to really consider who this person is. You really need to consider that. And the same thing for the man. It say husbands love, Ephesians 5 and 25. Husbands love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it. Man, he died for the church. When you really think about what you're supposed to be doing as a husband, is this what you want to deal with? The one that can't get with your program? The one that won't submit? The one that always got something smart to say? The one that's embarrassing you in public? The one that's talking crazy to you? I got a relative, they went on a family reunion. I wasn't there because it was on the Sabbath. I just heard about it. He ain't married to her right now. But she called him an a-hole in front of his mama, daddy, and family members. Excuse me, a jackass, I think is what she said. Excuse me, a jackass. She called him a jackass. And he was embarrassed. Man, hey. Totally unacceptable. But she didn't just one day just call him a jackass. It was signs leading up, just like I said in the last lesson a couple days ago. That man didn't just wake up one day and just sleep with some other man. Oh, it was signs. See, the fact that she was disrespectful, there were signs. You ignored them. You need to really look at a person's character. A lot of times people worried about what somebody look like. And that's the main thing. That's the main thing. They don't want to be lonely. They look at, oh man, this person's so good. And it's not even, it's about a person's character. What's the person's character like? Better consider that. You better consider that. So again, who defines marriage? The Bible defines what marriage is. It defines who it's between. It's between a man and a woman. Marriage is a covenant. It is an agreement. Okay? And oftentimes through that agreement, in order for a man to marry a woman, he had to go get permission from the father. He would pay a dowry. Okay? He would cleave unto his wife. Marriage is the institution best suited to bring forth children. That's ultimately what it's for. Oftentimes there are witnesses to this agreement through the form of a marriage festival. It could potentially be that there was some marriage contracts written down. That could be the case. The Bible, I can't read what the Bible tells you specifically. It do tell you it's a covenant. Some would say Malachi 2 or 14 is telling you that. We just know it's a covenant. I think that's the Hebrew word there. It's telling you it's a covenant, an agreement, right? They were writing bills of divorcement. They could have very well been writing contracts, marriage contracts. You don't say that. I can't read that though. Without a doubt, I can't read. You know what I'm saying? So it also is a marriage license necessary What's necessary is the covenant of marriage, the agreement between two parties. But an actual license from the state is not necessarily necessary in the eyes of God. Now, you go to the courts, or you go somewhere else in certain situations amongst men, they want to see some paperwork. Okay? I mean, specifically, sometimes a marriage contract. Okay? But people are making contracts. And again, this is not me suggesting what people should do. I'm just telling you what I've observed. People are making contracts in regard to marriage. Even that, again, that's what a ketubah is. Even though when people who do that, when they use a ketubah, they that's like ceremonial. They use they have this nice stencil, I guess it's stenciled ketubah, and then they will go and get a marriage license. Okay, so that's how they do it. But technically, you don't need a marriage license to be married in the eyes of God. It's a covenant. Okay, and you need to operate within that covenant as your position requires. Otherwise, you just a wife in name. You could be a wife and not be a wife. You could be a husband and not be a husband. So you have to play your position. That's what you have to do. And what you need to consider before getting married is yourself. And who's going to help me on this walk? Who's going to be a detriment to me? That's what you need to ask yourself. Some people are a detriment. They dead weight. They are a liability. They are not an asset in your life. So when you really think about it, think about what your role is, what your position is, you wouldn't be so quick to jump into it. Because you're supposed to stay married unto death. That's what's supposed to take place. And with that, brothers and sisters, I want to remind you we at the Household of Faith meet every Sabbath at 5925 West 25th Avenue in Gary, Indiana at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. We live stream right here on the Israel Teach YouTube channel, as well as at www.israelteach.org. You know, I hope somebody learned something. Hope you're edified through this message. I want to say we're going to be in Ohio. Give me 1 second. We're going to be in Ohio Friday the 25th. I'm going to put some information up soon. It's in October 25th. We'll be at Northern Lights Library in Columbus, Ohio from 12 to 5. We'll be at the Linden Library in Columbus. I had addresses, everything later, from 1 to 5. And we'll be at, we'll be at Northern Lights again from 1 to 4 on that Sunday. So again, that's October 25th, 26th, and 27th. Okay. And so, wait, hold on. Let me make sure that's the, let me give me 1 second. Give me that day. Let's see. Yeah, the 25th is that Friday. 26th is Saturday. But the 27th is that Sunday. So those 3 days we'll be out there. And again, I'll put some more information. So if you're in the Columbus or your area and the surrounding areas in Ohio, we'll be your way. We got a brother and sister out there doing the work, and truly, Brother Elbert and his wife, we truly appreciate it. And so we go come down there and bring the word down there. And with that, brothers and sisters, it's always my prayer that you are edified.